Okay, can you hear me? Perfect. I promise to do no economic modeling. This will be a far simpler topic to understand. And while I can't tell you that it will take care of climate change, what I do hope you come away from this is the idea that the coffee industry is moving towards sustainability. And if you really start thinking of the big picture, I would say not only is the coffee industry moving towards sustainability, I would say that we're moving other industries to follow us because we've proven that it's possible and that it's economic. So this is what we're going to go through. I just want to talk just a little bit. I know you guys know the coffee business, but I just want to put forward, how does coffee generally work? What are we talking about when we're talking about sustainable coffee? What has changed? And then how are some innovations happening that at the roaster level? And for the US market, I've pulled off 3 different levels, so we'll talk about those. And then finally, how does that go into mass marketplace and consumer? This is where I make my impassioned speech. Okay? We're talking about coffee because coffee is such a large commodity. And you know this, but for the countries where coffee is grown and sold, it's often the #1 export crop. For families who grow coffee, it is generally the only cash crop that they grow. So when coffee has a way of improving that relationship to the coffee farmer, we're talking about something really serious on people's incomes. The export value for farmers can be as low as 17% as that of their retail price, which is really small. When I'm quoting you industry numbers, I'm using my friend Danielle Gianlucci, who works at COSA. He does an awful lot of coffee research, and so I'm using his numbers as a baseline. If I give you any company numbers, I'm using them from the company directly, either from their own website if it's public, or if it wasn't, I just called them up and asked them. Most people are very proud to tell you that they're doing sustainability. So producers in general are only getting about 17% of retail value, maybe 30 cents a pound. It can be as little as that an individual producer gets. If you're talking about Robusta, there are studies that show that in a West African Robusta farmer, they'd be only getting 9 cents a pound for the coffee that they grow. We all know about volatility in pricing, and that volatility in pricing means one thing if you're a coffee business. It's really difficult to forward plan. It means something else entirely if you're a coffee farmer and your entire income is based on that volatility. So this insecure income for farmers really limits their ability to invest. In the short term, it limits their ability to pick frequently enough. In the longer term, it means they're not putting in enough inputs and they're not pruning and taking care of their trees enough. They're probably not hiring enough help, which all affects both their quality and the quantity of coffee that they grow, which again goes back to income. So it's this really negative circle. Good news, right? So that's all my bad news. Good news is that the coffee industry has known this as an issue for more than 20 years, and at least in the United States, for the past 15 years as an industry, we've been actively working on it. So I know you know this, but it just helps me kind of frame. I'm not saying we need to change this, but this is how coffee is traded, right? So it's grown, it's collected, it's milled, all the way through. The value, that final value, the majority of that value goes to the roaster. Now they have a lot of other expenses, granted, but very little of that revenue stream trickles all the way back down to the farmers. So here's some different ways that the industry is working on and getting more of that income back to farmers. Certified supply chains. There's been a lot of questions about that so far today, and good. That's one of the things I want to talk about. I think it's also something that Mark wants to talk about as well, so that'll be great. Quality competitions, you'll hear from Susie, so I'm not going to dive into that. But certainly improving the quality is a really good way for farmers to get more for their coffee. We're producing country development boards. You heard this morning from the Columbia and the FNC. They're amazing in the ability that they have to develop their own coffees and promote their coffees. And if there was an FNC in every country, we probably wouldn't need the certification that we have. But unfortunately, they're only limited to Columbia. And then this last piece that I would say is relationship coffee. I'm going to use my own company as a model for it because I know our model deeply enough, but I'm not saying at all that we're the only ones who function this way. I'll just talk you through how we do it. So these are the certifications you're going to find in the US today. And for the most part, I'm going to talk to you about US and specialty, only because it's what I know. This is what I've done for the past 20 years, so I don't want to start guessing on how things are done other places. There's 2 kinds of certifications, really. There's a third-party certification, meaning An individual, independent body created a certification. Hopefully they worked for the industry, so the certification makes sense. But they created the rules themselves. They're responsible for auditing against those rules. And then there's company certifications that are normally, at least within the certification world, called verifications. It's a company, this is like the Starbucks cafe practices, or the Nespresso AAA. In this case, it's a company setting a bar and a standard for how coffee must be grown so that they are willing to purchase it. There's a couple differences in how all of these function. What you'll generally find in the United States is fair trade, rainforest, organic, and of course cafe practices, because if you've ever been into the United States, there's a Starbucks on every corner. There's some other new products coming through in direct trade. We'll talk about direct trade a little bit through here. Direct trade is a concept that a roaster has created their own set of conduct and codes that a producer needs to follow. They've written a contract directly with those producers, and then they've gone down and done the auditing themselves. So a direct trade product could be amazingly better than any of the certification products, or it could be a really weak product. But you have to go out with your company's website to be able to see that, because there's nothing verifiable on the package necessarily. You have to, as a consumer. For certifications, I would say most basically create a standard. The ones that are focused in the United States, those standards are all based on protecting the environment, which includes things like water processing, how you should use water in your practice, limiting the kind of chemicals, making sure the chemicals are used safely. Social, meaning how is an organization held? Do all members have the same amount of rights? Can they actually change how their organization? Can they see the books in their organization? And then economic. Some programs offer a definite price. Some have an implied price because they have a traceable, clear system. So fair trade, there's a floor price and a social premium baked into the system. In rainforest, there's not a specific price, but rainforests have study after study demonstrating that their coffee gets a higher price. And if you actually look in the magazine that was on our desk when we all came back from lunch, somebody very nicely put in a little study in Guatemala showing that from this area, rainforest producers are getting, on average, $8 more a pound, or a bag, not a pound, that would be a good deal, $8 more a bag for having rainforest certification. Along with writing certificate, or writing the standard, the certification body needs to audit against that standard, and then they generally do some sort of promotion. Now, in the case of rainforest, organic, or fair trade in the United States, that's consumer promotion. If you get into products like Boots or 4C, these are more inter-industry pieces in the United States. So what you see when I say promotion is someone coming to an event like this and telling you the benefits of their program, but you don't see them doing consumer promotion. So I gave you a couple examples of what that promotion might look like. In the top right corner, this is a supermarket display that fair trade is being used. So it's just got a giant logo that says fair trade on it, making those products easier for consumers to see. When these kinds of promotions go on for Fair Trade USA, they'll mark them all over the store. So it's not just about coffee, it's about every fair trade product in a supermarket. So it would mark the produce and the tea and the chocolate bars and the sugar and the soda pop or whatever else is fair trade. And so as a consumer, you can start seeing that it's more in how to find those items. Rainforest, this is an example of a print ad that they've done. So they're both doing fairly traditional marketing. Neither one have extremely deep pockets, and so what you won't find from them is TV commercials. You see a lot of online media, a lot of social media. They have really, really active websites and Facebook accounts, which means they have a really good way of getting immediate content about the good that their services are doing to the people who care most deeply about it. And then I just gave you some volume ideas. I put everything in metric tons across the presentation just so you can start holding things in your head and seeing where they are. Rainforest is coming in at 35,000 metric tons, which is a really great number, right? We're coming in at these. What I can't tell you about these numbers, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right? So I can tell you that rainforest coffee isn't fair trade certified, so those two numbers don't overlap. But probably half the coffee that's being sold as organic is also fair trade. So that number doesn't add up to 113 metric tons, right? And Starbucks, they sell both organic and fair trade coffees. So unfortunately, I can't say that this is all one great big, smiling, great huge chunk of coffee. What's interesting is none of these certifications were really visible in the United States 15 years ago. So this is getting to be fairly serious volumes that we're talking about at this point. So if we talk about relationship coffee, think about having an audited supply chain and then taking it up a level. Certifications do good to the point that they do good, right? So they ban chemical usage, they may get somebody a little bit higher price. But what you really need to have farmers benefit is a long-term relationship, right? A farmer needs to know that when it's their crop season, you as their buyer are going to come back and buy from them. And they need that the same way you all have a salary, and your salary is consistent. You know you make however many dollars a year, and every week you get your salary, you get your check, and it's always consistent. Imagine if you had to come back to your boss every time and have to ask whether or not you're going to get paid, right? It's the same way that is how farmers think. They need that consistency to be able to make those investments in their farm. So I'd say the most important thing in a relationship with any farming organization, whether or not it's certified, is that it's traceable, so that you know where you're buying coffee, that it's transparent, and that it's long-term. The transparency, we probably go farther than most. It sounds like the Norwegian program we just heard about, actually. It sounds very similar. We talk to farmers, we find out what they want to sell their coffee, what's the price they want to sell it for. And we have a pretty good idea of what coffee in those regions may go for, but we still let them set their own price. We'll let them know if they're low, right? So if they want to sell it higher than what the market thinks, we'll start there. We'll find them a buyer, and we'll talk to them about price and work in between them. But we're very happy to get them directly connected, so that when you get a bill from us, you see the price of the coffee, you see the price of the margin that we put in the middle, you see all the logistics and costs, and then what the final cost is. And you can break those down into any level. I'd say the other things that you really need to maintain that long-term relationship, you need, as an importer and a brand, to be willing to invest in your producers so that they benefit along with you, right? You as a brand want to grow every year. That's your goal. You want to be a little bit bigger this time next year. If you want your producers to be able to grow along with you, you may need to invest along with them. I'll give you some examples of what that might look like. This is my transparency slide. So for us, this is what we're really talking about. So this is graphical. Clearly we don't send out pictures of dollar bills to our companies. But just as an idea, we run an annual report every year that tells you how much of the money went back to farmers in their bills, how much we kept as overhead and what we invested it in, and then how much we invested every time. sorry, I hope that didn't feel like a commercial for my business. There's lots of companies who are doing their own ways of making sure the entire supply chain knows one another, knows what the issues are, and finds a way to jointly go about fixing it. So the company I work for has done it through our yearly supply chain meeting. We call it Let's Talk Coffee. And we bring producers, we bring funders, we bring the folks who help us with technical assistance, and we bring the roasters. And we bring everybody together. And we have a forum just like this over a couple of days. This year it was about 500 people, and we were in Antioquia, Colombia. And we had 3 solid days of meetings, and then a couple of days out touring countryside. So what that is farmers from all over the world. We request that we have the cupper and the general manager. Because what we want to make sure is we get an idea of how do we work with the quality of this organization, and how do we make sure that the organization itself has the business savvy to be able to grow along with our roaster partners. And part of this is surely just getting everybody together. 500 people where maybe 80 of them are from the coffee buying side, and everybody else is coffee producers. I mean, whether or not we've set it up, there's an awful lot of best practice sharing just because people have come together and have that opportunity to share. So, I don't know whether or not in Korea you're yet familiar with the Coffee Quality Institute. In the United States, we started a few years back talking about Q grade cupping, which for us is how to keep track of the quality of what's in coffee. Because before this, everybody had their own methodology, which kind of meant chaos in the cup. So we trained about half of our own staff to be Q-grade cuppers, and we have a goal that says we would like 2 cuppers who are formally trained and licensed by CQI at every organization that we partner with, which is about 200 different organizations at this point. So we'd like to be able to get that to everybody that we work with. And we don't do it because we think it's a really nice thing. We do it so that when we have the cuppers in our producer organizations, they're cupping to that exact same quality level that our business partners, our roasters are. And we keep track of that information all the way through. We request to get the scores from the cooperative or the state or whoever we got the coffee from. We cup ourselves and check to make sure we're in alignment. We also send that sample off to the roasters, and then we compare and how close are we. But it also lets us see year over year, are those cupping scores going up? Are our investments paying off? Is the organization able to either produce higher quality or more coffee at that quality? So it's a nice data point for us. We also do a lot of farmer field school kind of training. So I just showed you one picture here. This would have been an agricultural training, and we're on the west coast of the US. We're pretty technology geeky, so we do them on iPads. With an iPad, we can train anybody who's never used a computer at all in about 2 days to effectively use an iPad. And it allows us to have the content that we share that day, but we also have the ability to work through where are we going on. It allows us to keep through any videos and any other trainings that we want, so that people have an entire, say, coffee college available on one iPad. So this year at the SCA, it was in Portland, which is our home. And when we had, a couple hundred farmers from our supply chain came, we went to the Apple store, we came and opened up for us early, and we sold about 500 iPads that day at a discount. I'm going to start thinking about actual roaster innovations. Third wave sounds like it's about how a lot of Korean coffee is. We think of coffee initially in the United States, it's just we had coffee, that was our first wave. Peeps and Starbucks came in, they were pretty much our second wave. We brought some specialty coffee. Third wave, real artisan, barista-focused coffee. And I bring these up not because they're super high quality. They are super high quality. You can get a pour-over coffee that takes about 7.5 minutes for a barista to make you, which means you need to be patient, but it's going to taste really good. But in that 7.5 minutes, that barista can tell you anything about that coffee that they know. And these people know more about coffee than I think I ever hoped. So they may tell you about how it's brewed, the quality they take in roasting, or they may tell you an awful lot about the producers. And so in this case, I would say that they're talking about the sustainability efforts that they do one-on-one, with the direct informational sharing. If you go up a level, I would say that specialty coffee has gone mainstream in the United States. And so there's several roasters who are fairly good size, who have their brand, totally wrapped up in the idea of being specialty. I call out Caribou Coffee, who's up in Minnesota, because I find them just fascinating. They took their supply chain, all the producers in their supply chain, and took about 10 years and brought them all into the certification product that they wanted to work in, which is Rainforest Alliance. So what's amazing about that? First of all, they knew all of their producers before anybody else in the industry. They really knew where their coffee came from. And then they really worked with each and every group to do all of the hard work to get everybody certified. So they have still the same group of people. One or two really didn't make it, but for the most part, they have the same group of people, and they'll stay with these forever. Right? That's their intent. This is really what long-term relationships look like. They have the ability to advertise this in store, and then they do it on every package. So you can find this information on their website, on their coupons. Basically, everything they do has a really strong sustainability message. This is Green Mountain Coffee, a company I used to work for. They are currently the largest fair trade coffee company in the world, which is fairly amazing because they're much, much smaller than some of those very large companies who are doing this kind of work. They really put a stake in the ground on fair trade, and they have because it works for them. You know, so they may be in the Northeast and kind of in a lefty-leaning place, but they don't do this because they're nice. They do this because it's really good business for them. They have statistic after statistic from showing that the coffee that they're buying from the same cooperatives, that it goes up in quality, that they can buy more from those same groups year over year. And when they bring in a new cooperative, they tend to continue working with them from that point on. At this point, they're doing really very mainstream marketing. They're getting to be a really big company. They're up around, there was something north of $2 billion. I don't know their last statistic, but they're getting really big. So the top picture, that's Michael Franti. He's a pop star. You know when you get to the size where you're hiring a pop star to be your spokesperson, you're getting fairly large. So this year in Fair Trade Month, which is October, you get a free online concert. You could buy a ticket and go to Los Angeles and see it, or you could just tune in on YouTube. And he did a really nice long piece talking about Sumatra, where he'd gone on a trip to learn all about fair trade. And of course, when they talk about fair trade, they find every one of the packages as a package example. I would say the largest specialty sustainable coffee in the United States is Starbucks. Starbucks has their own program, Cafe Practices. Probably many of you are aware of it. They worked with a couple outside sources to do it, but it really is their own standard. At this point, they're almost there. They'll think they'll be there 100% in Cafe Practices by 2015, which is fairly amazing because they don't necessarily have long-term relationships with their producers. They're very, very large scale. Some of them they know very well. Some of them they really don't. It's managed by their supply chain. And so the idea that they could get this, disseminate this knowledge and have this kind of benefit out on the producer level is fairly amazing. I call out their fair trade. It's the only figure I can find. I know they also do organic, but I don't know what it is. But it's not too shabby a number either, so it's just basic. What they're doing in huge states. If you go into Europe or UK, all of their products at this point are fair trade certified. I just want to talk about mass market for just a little bit, so forgive the ugly slide. But I think what's happening from the specialty side, so, you know, if I'm your barista, I can tell you. If I'm a mid-sized to a fairly good-sized cafe, it'll be in my packaging. It's part of my brand attributes. It's how I express myself to my consumers. The success that these companies have is really pushing forward what's happening in this next scale. So Mandalay International, we didn't see the press release in October, is what we used to call Kraft. They now have a new name. And they're directly investing $200 million in their supply chain. They're doing that because, again, they're focused on really benefiting the farmers at that first part. Sara Lee, who is probably the largest global coffee brand out there, is actually the largest sustainable, is how they're focused on this. They're stepping forward again. Walmart, which is the largest retailer in the world, but certainly probably the largest in the United States, they have their own fair trade lines in Walmart and Sam's Club, but they're looking at their other products to figure out how do they take this forward and move into something that's sustainable, whether or not it's certified. McDonald's has already certified everything, basically out of the United States, into Rainforest Alliance, and now they're trying to figure out what does that mean for the 60 million pounds of coffee that they buy in the United States, and how do they make that so that it's actually beneficial and we can continue to buy it year over year. Dunkin' Donuts, which I was really pleased being in New Englander to see it's in Korea. Their espresso program has been 100% fair trade since 2006. The companies that are listed below are just showing you that, at least in the US and Europe, these kinds of changes are going global across an entire brand. Unilever, which probably makes the world's soap, along with some ice cream and other products, is going to take all of the supply chain pieces and make everything sustainable. So the changes that we're seeing that we see in coffee will soon be on every consumer level. And I just want to talk about US consumers just really briefly. I don't think US consumers are driving this completely, and I don't think the brands are driving this completely. I think they kind of go back and forth, one after the other. I think some of the brands are doing this because of enlightened self-interest. They need to make this investment before they can continue to buy coffee. But certainly, if you take a look at what's happening in the United States, for the first time since the 1970s, when we really started eating heavy-duty processed foods, we really are starting to care about where our food came. Now, anything you say in the United States, you can say the exact mirror opposite at the same moment. I could also show you foods that are bright blue and have no known natural product in them, and yet are still legal to eat and consume and are fed to small children. So not all of the United States is very sustainable, but a good portion of the United States consumers are really caring about this. And so you can see that trend in farmers markets, local organic and fair trade movements. You can see it in food bloggers. I think everybody's a food blogger at this point. And I bring up food bloggers because that social media piece is huge. When we talk about people trusting a peer-to-peer recommendation over a company, I don't necessarily mean that I had dinner with you and I said, do you know that Starbucks is my favorite coffee company because they do X, Y, and Z? I might have tweeted it. And just the fact that I'm not a paid sponsor for Starbucks is enough to make you start thinking that that's a positive move forward. That's it. So we can certainly, at the end of this, start talking about all the certification pieces, but just so we can get that conversation started up again.